Morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Our first hour is general discussion on media production, and our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today's a whole second hour of Q&A, so get those questions into us via MoCa or by going to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Anytime, 24/7, get those questions off the top of your head and in front of this great panel. But speaking of questions, Mitch, let's dive right in.
Thank you, CJ. We're kicking off with Douglas Carmichael. Disney streaming made their master control room remote during the pandemic. Could you see a mainstream broadcaster taking the risk of fully Belfasting an entire live production and dispensing with the physical broadcast facility completely?
Go ahead, Alex.
Now, I know we're getting into the weeds, but Belfasting technically is not getting rid of the physical environment. So Douglas, I thought that you would know this. You are the Belfasting expert here, but Belfasting is us taking over a physical location, in this case, the Accidental Theater, and so in Belfast. So the Belfasting is actually people remote taking over all the hardware that's in a physical broadcast facility, and so it's not dispensing with it, but taking it over. And a lot of people are doing more or less of that as we continue to move forward. Our companies going to move into the cloud? Absolutely. And I think that, there's still a lot of flow issues that I think that are there. I think that there's a lot of audio issues, but we expect to see some stuff. When CalRec was on our show, they talked about the fact that they're moving some stuff into the cloud. And so I think that there's going to be some more opportunities. There's a lot of rough edges that still need to be, I think, ironed off to be completely in the cloud on a regular basis for large events, but I think that we're definitely on our way there. Probably in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see more and more production going into the cloud.
Next question.
Paul Wallace from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Mozilla versus Big Tech. Discuss how Firefox is being squeezed out by Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and is it true, as Paul Thurott says on Windows Weekly, that Apple is the primary assassin?
Go ahead, Alex.
I think that assassin's a big word. I don't think Apple cares about anything other than Safari. So I think that that's the issue, is like they're just, Apple is, makes Safari, and the other ones they're happy to have them. I think that Chrome working is important because Chrome's probably the largest one that's out there at this point. I think that Windows is important to Apple. I mean, Windows doesn't really, Edge, a lot of them hadn't worked on the Mac platform for a long time. So I think that those are the big three, and I do think it's just hard, but it would be interesting to hear from, I think we have some members that are very connected to this conversation, but I don't know if they put their if they say something in our chat, we'll take a look at it. But I think that Mozilla I think it's great that Mozilla is there. I think they do provide a service. I think that they are getting squeezed. I don't know if Apple isn't assassin. I think assassin would assume that they actually were aiming at Mozilla. Like you have to be an assassin. They're more of a kind of just not paying attention. So I think that that's more of Apple's position on this, most likely.
All right, go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, I used to be a Firefox user for quite a while ago, before Chrome got really popular, and I switched to Chrome, and it was mostly because of that Firefox was getting slow. For me now, I'm sure it's better now, and I still use it like as a secondary browser. But I think part of the problem is like on Google or Android, then you have the Chrome on the phone. And you have an ecosystem, and on Apple you have the Safari that you can have on the phone or the computer. And I think most people want to have like connected their browsers. So I think that's one of the problems.
Ronnie.
Yeah, well, being a Norwegian, I've always used Opera from time to time. And I think there was a breakout group coming out of Opera, the Opera development crew. And they started a project they called Vivaldi, which is also based on Chromium. And Vivaldi as a browser is really gaining traction. It's really cool. You should try it.
And Courtney, wrap us up.
And with all the AI stuff going out there, of course, Microsoft is trying to maintain their edge over everybody else with their Edge browser. And so it has Copilot built into the Edge browser and kind of forces you to use the Edge browser if you want to use Copilot, although they are building Copilot into all of their apps. And the same thing is now going for Google with Chrome, because they're now moving Gemini in as the major search engine in Chrome. So they're adding AI to Chrome, and now I'm certain that Apple will be adding something to Safari, the rumor is, in the next few months, or maybe announcing it in the next few months. So we'll see. So AI is trying to edge out, adding to the competition, and Mozilla, I don't think they're linked to any AI. So I don't think Firefox has any AI features built in, and so that's going to kind of move it to the back row of the bus, I'm afraid.
And really, the challenge is just the amount of money that's being poured into WebKit and Safari, and the amount of development that's behind Chrome and Chromium. Mozilla, arguably, is steering a much smaller boat. So it's an issue of resources. But I know personally, I really hope that they hang in there, because we need competition and enough people that are a little bit more nimble with new ideas to help keep moving everybody forward. Next question.
And it's a QR code question from Gabriela Aceso Mistera from Sault Ste. Marie. Does Alfeon work directly with other cloud-based video services like Hybrik?
Go ahead, Alex.
And it's Alfeon, but that was one of our guests. I don't believe that they do work with Hybrik. They were on this question, I think, came in during that show, but I don't believe they may work with other cloud-based softwares, but I don't think Hybrik is one of them.
Next question.
Martin North in Bath, UK. Is it possible to get Zoom ISOs to SDI in a Windows 11 environment? I have an OWC PCie Box to USB 3 Thunderbolt and Blackmagic Duo SDI card working in OBS, but even a single Zoom window is not captured. Must I go Apple?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, you can't run Zoom ISO on Windows, but vMix recently released their 27 now, so you can actually bring the ISOs into vMix, and on the new vMix 27 you can do 4 outputs on like a decklink card, for example. So you can send your four outputs on a decklink. You can also, if you're not using vMix for anything else, you can in theory run 2 outputs over HDMI, but you have to be careful. I think there's some limitations on how many inputs you can bring into Zoom, at least in 1080p.
Alex?
Yeah, I will say that if I was going to do Zoom ISO, if I wanted ISO outputs, I would absolutely just get a Mac Mini and get the outputs that you need. It's going to be a lot simpler than using a larger piece of software just to do those outputs. So it's a very dedicated piece of software. I use it almost every day, and it works exceptionally well.
Next question.
Another QR code question from Eric Strand in Essex, Connecticut. The small production company I work at is purchasing new desks. Are there desks for editing and cable management you like, or overall thoughts on what you've found useful in a desk?
Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific brand that I particularly like. I think that the things to think about if you look at something like this is a broadcast desk, but it can be used, you can have a lot of these things. But one of the things that you think about is, do you need any rack space that's down below? Do you need any turrets? These are turrets, and these will go down, so you can put some of your rack-mounted stuff up here. How are you going to mount those? The screens? Sometimes they're going to be on their own. Now, this one is obviously heavy enough that you're not going up and down, but oftentimes do you want to be able to adjust? A lot of smaller edit desks will be able to adjust up and down so that the editor can stand up, sit down, and make those adjustments in between. Those don't all go together in the same desk, typically. But those are the things to kind of think about are, how much space do you need? So also the depth of the desk. So a typical desk is 30 inches deep. Most desks that we get at least are about 30 inches deep. If you start taking those up with turrets, do you make it deeper? But the problem is if the desk is too deep, then the turret's too far away to reach. So you end up with a situation where you have to make sure that the turrets don't require you to lean in too much to grab onto them, but it will take away some of your front, some of the part of your front area. So you just got to kind of balance all of those things out. But if you're talking about editing, and I'm assuming when you're talking about editing, you're talking about Final Cut or Premiere or Resolve. Those are some of the things to think about there. For broadcast, there's a lot of other issues. Where are you going to put your monitors? Are the desks on rollers? So one of the designs that we built in the past, we had a system where essentially you had a main desk with your turrets, 2 turrets, and you had the edit bay, and then you had 4 big screens in front of the TD, you had another desk that was here that had the audio desk with some more monitors, and we had another desk that managed streaming and utility and everything else over here. And then these wheels allowed this to spin out. So if you had, and these to spin out and even move over this way. And the reason for that is it was so that we could have one person run a show. If it was a small show, they could just simply grab all the things they needed to, but you could swing them out so that if you needed to have more people working on it, each desk was large enough to put two bodies on it, although they were set up so that they could swing in and have one person just simply have arms reach to everything. So those are the kind of things you think about if you're thinking more about on the broadcast end of things.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I like those big, expensive desks that Alex was showing. I think there's a company called Forecast that makes some of the most beautiful pieces of furniture. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you just need a desk and one that can raise and lower, which is another consideration, go to your Home Depot and get yourself a Husky desk for under $200, or around $200. So the idea that it being able to raise and lower means that some people prefer to stand while they work, and some people prefer to sit, and some people like something in between. So you have the option.
Ronnie?
Flexibility is also really important, as Alex said. You have to be building a desk for something that you have a kind of equipment you have today, and then tomorrow you have some other equipment. So specifying a specific desk for exactly the situation you have today is not really a good idea because everything changes so fast. Another thing I would say, as a production company, we also have these type of desks in our production company. And what is really important is the placement of speakers, or several speakers, so that you can have different types of speakers for close listening. And if you're placing those on the desk, you have to be sure that there are no, vibrations, etc., coming down through the desk. Or in the other case, where you have speakers on stands, you need to be able to have displays in front of you, and maybe even have the desk against the wall and have displays mounted to the wall. And if you are placing them on the desk, a lot of monitors and displays, they have big feet. So make sure you can have a desk where you can lower the feet so that you can actually look above the display if you're going to watch on something that are in front of you.
Ronnie, they make devices that you can place under your near-field speakers that absorb. I think they're called absorbers, but they're little wedges of high-dense foam material that will absorb all that stuff.
Alex?
And a company that we've worked with in the past. So a lot of the bigger desks, the bigger broadcast desks, are made out of 80-20. So 80-20 is the thing. You don't want to try to make that yourself. So we've tried, and unless you have someone who really knows 80-20, there are thousands. Like if you want a great catalog, there's certain catalogs I keep in my. They're right over here. I can't quite get to that one right now, but or 80-20 is one of them. So 80-20, Granger, Uline, B&H, Sweetwater. Those are the ones that I kind of love to look through Marketech. But anyway, 80-20 is a really thick one that has all the different options, and there's companies that really understand how to use it. The company that we've built all of our desks with, I don't buy them off the shelf. I order them, and we build them in SketchUp. And then we design them in SketchUp. We send them to them. They look at it and bring it back to us in SolidWorks or a CAD. And by the way, our SketchUp just gives us a rough idea. We don't even try that hard because watching them live do your desk is amazing. And the company's called CabinetWorks Unlimited, not the CabinetWorks Group, which does, kitchens and stuff like that. But CabinetWorks Unlimited is the one that we do, and they specialize in broadcast desks. And they'll sit there with a CAD program and just work through it as you talk. Oh, I want a turret here. I want a turret there. I want a turret there. And they can, but they're building it with all the components inside of AutoCAD. And they're able to then just give you a quote really, really fast, and you'll see exactly what you're going to get. So if you really get serious about this and you're ready to spend, it's not huge money, but more money than what you're going to spend at Home Depot, CabinetWorks Unlimited is a great place to go. I think they're out of Cleveland or something like that. It's like in the middle of the country.
And then, Eric, a couple things that I've picked up from designing a few offices in the last few years is beware of the beveled desk. It's going to look pretty. They're going to want to sell you on it, but you have so much stuff that is a C-clamp, whether it's a monitor stand or I like to have what would be the equivalent of a mouse holder offset underneath the desk by just 2 inches. That way, if I spill my drink, it spills onto the floor and not onto my expensive top of my desk. And when you're building the desk, if it is going to be a standing desk or something that you want to have portable but don't necessarily want to put wheels on, before you put all your stuff on top of the desk, put those furniture sliders underneath so that you can move that around your space if it's not going to be set in stone in the ground. Alex?
And if you want ideas, I would go to their website because they've got lots of behind-the-scenes pictures of these ideas. And this is out of Salem, Ohio. But you'll see lots of how other people are building their desks because these guys design desks for everybody. So check that out.
I want turrets everywhere now.
Turrets are the best.
You just red-pilled me to turrets.
My next one was definitely going to have turrets.
Next question.
Jacob Goodnight from Indianapolis, Indiana. Is it possible to configure the side button on the Shokz OpenComm to mute and unmute instead of hanging up? I'm aware that the OpenComm 2 has a dedicated mute button, but I'm curious about the original model.
Go ahead, Alex.
Even if it did, I wouldn't do it. I don't think it does it. I think you turn it on and off. I don't think you can set mute, but I really need confidence that the mute is off. I need to see that it's not working. I would absolutely continue to use it on my phone. I would never trust that. Yeah. So I would not use it on the headset. I've used these on headsets in the past with little ones, and you mute them and they don't really mute. So I'd be very careful of that.
We're usually really on the side of a hardware mute around here, but when you think about it, that unless you're physically severing the electrical connection to that microphone, it's a software mute. So you're depending on the software of the headset, not the.
Mickey said to press and hold the volume plus and minus buttons simultaneously. So there you go. Something that I still feel like I would have to take the headset off to do. And Mickey did point out that user manuals are a wonderful thing, but we recommend against that because when you ask the question here, we tell everyone what the answer is. If you read the manual, we won't have anything to talk about. So this is a non-manual organization. So this is where we all just talk about those things. So it's a great question, but again, I wouldn't do it, and especially with pushing the volume up and down at the same time on my heads You have to understand, in the use case, I would feel like I had to take it off, look at it, do it, put it back on. To mute something, I'd rather just do it with my phone. So there is an answer. The answer is yes. Would we ever do it? No, I wouldn't do it.
Next question.
QR code incoming from A. Schultz in Los Angeles. Does the YouTube support simultaneous streams from the same channel?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yes, you can do it, but you have to make a separate stream key for each of the streams that you're going to stream at once. I would also think about if you really want to stream several streams from one channel, because perhaps the people that are watching will get confused, especially if you're doing the same stream in different languages, and then they might choose the wrong one. So what we've done when we've done a separate language stream, then we've just made a second YouTube channel for the second language.
Alex?
Yeah, for a variety of SEO reasons, we tend to try to keep a lot of those channels to be the same, but you can do it exactly the way Samuel laid out. You can create a new channel, especially if you're going to create a lot of content for each language. Languages are the most popular. I think the most I know of someone doing simultaneous streams to YouTube was, 18. And so you can have 18 streams going at the same time. You could do it to the same channel. Unfortunately, what you used to be able to do is use the same key for multiple events on the same channel. And the advantage of that was you could have a private stream that was going on that you were practicing with and everything else, knowing that you were using the same ingest, and then simply turn the public stream on when it was ready to be turned on. And we can't do that anymore. So YouTube took that away for, I'm sure, security reasons. But yeah, you can create them. I highly recommend naming them carefully. So don't let them be automatic. If you're going to do multiple channels, define what those, you can say manage channels or create channels, and create managed channels and name each one of them exactly what it is. So it's easy for you to find. And when you're not using them anymore, delete them. Otherwise you end up with a big, pile of channels that you're digging through on your YouTube in the back end, and I would avoid that if I could.
So if you're streaming to 18 different channels, is it one stream up to YouTube and then it's splintering out, or do you have 18 different uploads that you need to have bandwidth for?
Typically, when you start getting into these types of things, we've definitely done them in a lot of different ways. So one of the ways that we've done it with appliances, with elemental appliances, we will stream, we will have one SDI feed and it has all the channels on it. So it might have, the most typical would be stereo or right and left for the first 2 channels. And then the next 5 channels are just single channels of the different languages. That can get a lot more complicated, but those are all embedded. You can put up to 16 channels onto one SDI feed. So that could be up to, theoretically, 16 languages. And so all those languages go into the encoder, and then the encoder just spits them all out in different, and for an appliance, like an elemental appliance, if you're not scaling, you can easily do 16 channels out of a larger appliance, like a 600 or above. We'll just take all 16 channels and you can put 16 streams out of the same one. But that, as you pointed out, you really need 300 or 400 megs a second to do that. You want to give it your headroom and then double that. And so you would need a lot of bandwidth to do that. The most typical way for us to do that now is to do one stream with all those channels into the cloud. So we go into AWS. You can do 8 channels with the link, and 16 channels with the Ultra HD link into AWS. In AWS, you do exactly the same thing. You just pick off the channels from in the cloud, and then send them all out to their individual things. And when you get it running, it's just you turn it on and go, and it's going to grab all the right channels and send them all out. It does take a lot of testing to make sure you're getting the right channels. So one of the things that we have are files that have, it's like a 1-minute loop or 2-minute loop, and you can say French, 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 German, German, German. Like you can say those things, but what really works is to go ahead through that. We've gone through the trouble of having 16 channels of an event, and we actually have the interpreters in those channels. Although I think now I would probably do it again. I haven't done that for years, but we have done it when we've tested those channels in the past. I could do it with AI now, where it would just take the English and just give me audio versions of all of those so that I can hear what channel I'm going out with. What I probably would do if I built that again, if someone's thinking about it, is I probably use different voices in 11 labs. So it's a different voice and a different language for each one of those. And then you want to stream lots of tests and make sure that you're getting it. It says in the drop down, this is the language. So with YouTube, you build lots and lots of channels. With other players like the Apple Foundation player, it's simply a drop down. So the HLS, you would package that up as an HLS, and the audio goes separately. So you can simply package that as another channel inside of it. And so you have all those languages available in one player. But YouTube, I believe, YouTube may be making other changes there.
Ronnie?
I just wonder if Alex understood what I was about to ask about, because we need this functionality in the players. And my question was similar to what Alex ended with. Which of the big players are supporting multi-language default?
I think Bitmoving will support it in their player. So Bitmoving will do it. I know the Apple Foundation player will support it. Those are 2 of the more robust players out there, and so I would take a look at those. There are, obviously there's a variety of players that you can. I don't work with custom players that much. Usually I use the ones that I have available to me. The Apple player is probably the most feature-filled, the Apple Foundation player, but the problem is it's only on Apple products. The real thing you get into is that if you're dealing with players, you're typically dealing with HLS. And in the HLS format, Apple built it. Apple built everything to support it. And Dash is going to be, of course, the other solution that you have there. And on streaming to Apple devices, the only thing you have to worry about with your is what you're supporting. So if you start adding HDR and other things like that, that gets more complicated. But in the basic manifest that you would build for an Apple Foundation player, it's pretty straightforward to deliver to Apple devices. The real problem you get into is Android and Windows are way more fragmented, and all those devices get very so because of Android and Windows, a lot of when you think of the streaming platforms, the Disney platforms and everything else, they dynamically generate the manifests. So they'll look at your device ID as it comes in and send you the manifest. And if you're wondering how many manifests you have to create to do that, it's over 400. So over 400 manifests are being created dynamically or being sent dynamically, not created, but sent dynamically for that device. Because the problem is that you might have new features. And in those new features, if you put them at the top, you want them at the if you put them at the top, you might confuse the devices that don't know what those are. And if you put them at the bottom, the device, a more advanced device might grab onto it and grab onto a lower quality one and not show you the best you could do. And so the cleanest way to do that is to build a dynamic manifest for every single device that's out there. I mean, Apple kind of being a group of devices, but all the other ones tend to get more customized solutions. And this is, again, what companies like Bitmovin and other people handle a lot of that for you.
Next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. Douglas asked, could you see generative AI platforms used as part of mainstream production pipelines, or would there be too many risks?
Courtney?
Well, it depends. Depends on the type of production. It depends on whether it's live and you're generating stuff on the fly, like we do here sometimes on office hours. We do it if you're doing it for entertainment purposes only, and you're not a news program, generative AI could get you in a lot of trouble if you're in a news program. And so I think the major news networks shy away from using any type of generative, either we're using large language models or anything else, unless they have it trained on their own news sources, so it's pulling from known sources to generate answers. As far as image generative AI, I've noticed lately that because Microsoft, if you use Copilot, and Google, if you use Bard or now Gemini, indemnifies the users against lawsuits over the stuff created in those generative AIs. So they have lawyers on staff who can deal with the lawsuits that are bound to come in. And I've noticed the guardrails getting higher and higher on those. I've noticed that if you input something into Copilot and ask it to generate an image, that looks like a still alive artist style, it won't let you do that. If you try and say generate an image of a celebrity or a politician, it won't let you do that. If you have it say generate an image of children, it won't let you do children under 17. So it makes it pretty tough to do a children's book with generative AI with the guardrails up. I'm not sure if Midjourney has all those guardrails. It seems to be a little bit looser. But I've noticed the generative AI that is now available in most browsers to people, I do find that the guardrails are pretty high, and so it's pretty hard to generate something that would be offensive these days.
Mitchell?
I'm really spoiled because I'm a user of Photoshop, and the generative capabilities of it now allow you to do things like this real fast. Look at the hair. Look at the lighting. I don't know who that gentleman is, and I can only hope that our friends at Adobe are holding me harmless in case that gentleman decides to sue me. But the ability to be able to do that fast within a workflow is really hard to give up once you got used to it. And if somebody came along and told me, you can't do that anymore, I would be very hard-pressed to accept that.
Alex?
It's already happening. I don't think I can get into exactly all the details, but generative AI is being used all over the place. With imagery, writing, it'll eventually be part of the production pipeline. It's being used everywhere. People aren't talking about it that much because obviously there's a lot of legal stuff. So people are just saying, "Well, I did that." So it's because right now it's your word against theirs in a lot of cases, especially if you're going to re-edit things and do. It's part of it's not being used like wholesale. Like I'm using imagery or video from one of these services. It's being used in pieces, but when I talk to folks that are in production, they're using it everywhere. So for dialogue, for scenes, for ideas, for images, for textures, for every wallpaper. It turns out that like one of the things you can do in Midjourney is -- tile, and it'll make it a seamless tile. And I was talking to somebody, it's the best thing ever when you're building like little 3D things for houses and everything else. You need some wallpaper. You just say, I want flowers, blah, 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 in this style, and you get wallpaper. You put it on. So there's lots of people using it in many, many aspects right now.
Alex, could you use it to create step and repeat backgrounds?
You could. now that the text works inside of Midjourney, you could even have text in step and repeat. But there's a large cavern in hell for you to use AI to extend the life of step and repeat.
It does show up in interesting ways, though. Like this week, I have a survey that I wanted to do for employees at work, people who are in the shop, people who are in the offices. So I went into Midjourney. I said, "Give me an Uncle Sam. I want you." And it gave me the guy. And then I took him and I put him into Photoshop and I expanded it to 12 by 18. And I said, "Okay, expand." And it made him taller. And then I threw in a font. And in 20 minutes, I had a poster that I've gotten more engagement because I printed a poster and put a QR code on it than I ever did before. And I wouldn't have been able to do something that good without hiring someone.
And it would have been weeks and lots of money and lots of revisions, and it probably wouldn't have looked as good, unless you were really hiring like a top level artist to do that. I think that what people forget in this whole thing is that 99% of the content out there doesn't care about copyright. It is corporate communication, it's educational content, it's all these other things. And in that world, this is just making things faster and easier. It just doesn't matter, And so that's where this is blowing up, is because I send out cards and I send out images to friends as just for fun, and that is all those things are things that there's the vast majority of content by weight that's being created right now is all being done without any regard to copyright because it doesn't matter. And that's going to become more and more problematic, because I think as the tools get better, I think the risks that we don't realize is that as people are able to build better and better content for YouTube or TikTok or their friends or school or whatever, the importance of the copywritten stuff that we get over TV and everything else becomes less and less, because we're not competing over quality between this content and that content. We have to remember that what we're competing for is time. Everyone gets lost in that's not as good as this or that's not as good as that. It doesn't matter. How much time are people spending on this platform or doing this thing versus something else? And in the end, time is the thing that wins.
Mitch?
Yeah, the point you just made, Alex, about time, it's interesting because that little thing I showed earlier, this guy that's created, if I were to create that from scratch in Photoshop, I would spend hours and hours to get that just right. And generative did that in 30 seconds.
And that's you on the creation side, but I'm talking about on the recipient side. If more and more content that we're watching is something that can be done faster and better, sure, you're spending less time creating it, and they're spending more time looking at it. Now, I will say that while I can do something really quick, I'll sit down in Midjourney and lose 2 or 3 hours that I would have been watching some other show, except I'm creating a bunch of images that I think are really fun, and I get at least as much joy out of doing something in Midjourney than I do watching most television shows.
But if you charge by the hour, there's the hook.
I guess I get charged by the hour. I pay once a year for Midjourney, a lot, once a year. So other than December 24th, it all feels very free to me.
Don't confuse effort with results. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the question is concerning mainstream productions, and in a mainstream production, a lot of people don't realize that the amount of vetting that the lawyers go through on television programs, let's say anything that's in mainstream broadcast or theatrical production, all of those scripts are gone through with a fine-tooth comb, not just for copyright or plagiarism, but for libel. They check every name. They vet every name of every serial killer or character that's used in a movie to make sure that there's not one guy with that name who can sue you, because there's not that many people with that name. So there's a lot of legal vetting that goes on between images generated on all the screens that appear in TV shows and so on. So, that will still go on. Whether it's AI generated or created by an artist, you have to face those particular legal hurdles to get over. As far as using it in a live show, there is a problem of, I've found it very irregular. Now, of course, I'm not paying the big bucks like Alex Lindsay is to have the highest tier of generation in Midjourney. But on the free versions that are available now in Copilot, Bard, and the entry-level Midjourney, response can be instantaneous or it can take 10 minutes. So if you're doing it a live show, you got to be prepared to pay the bucks to have the highest end to get you the fastest response if you're going to be using generative AI in a live situation.
Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman in Orlando, Florida, looking at some pan tilt zoom solutions for a semi-outdoor symphonic venue. We need a robust solution with high-quality images. What do you think of the AWR 100 4K Outdoor Professional PTZ Camera?
Alex?
Panasonic makes great cameras. I haven't used this one specifically. I've used the 120 and 150s, and those are great sensors. And it looks very full-featured. It supports SRT, NDI. It has a 4K 60 output. So it looks like a very solid camera. I don't think you're going to find another all-in-one camera. There's lots of other types of outdoor solutions. But as far as an all-in-one solution, I think you're not going to go much better than this. I think Canon may have a couple that are a little higher here, and then of course after that it's probably Mark Roberts are the other solutions that with some kind of outdoor enclosure. But I think for at that price point, I think you're looking at a great camera.
Next question.
Max Schiffman with a QR code question. Max from Carlsbad, California. What would be the reason for a noisy and grainy video feed over fiber from a Blackmagic Ursa 6K? We're shooting from front of house about 100 feet away with a long-range lens.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I would think there are two main reasons. It's too little light on the stage or where you are shooting. And the other thing is that the lens you're using is not good enough or can do the lower f-stop that is needed when you are shooting long range. The other thing I would say is the camera sensor itself. Even the G2s on the broadcast series is not that good compared to what you are used to from other cameras. So it needs a good piece of light to light up everything. And if you are going to check the third option, which could be the SDI conversion, just put in an SDI cable and test if it's any better. In that case, it's the encoding in the SDI that could be the culprit.
Alex?
I would be thoroughly surprised if your transport is creating grain. Like, I've just never seen that before. I would definitely love to know what your ISO setting is on your camera. I agree with Ronnie that I think that it's gained up somewhere. So it's gained up. You have a long lens that's a 4.5 or something like that, and you've had to open it up. You've had to gain up a little bit. But I don't know why. I've never seen noise and grain. I've seen things break up, when it comes like snow or frame loss or other things like that, but just a merely grainy image, that really sounds like an ISO problem in your camera.
Courtney?
Yes, I concur with our previous panelists. I think it's, a long lens usually means, especially if it's not a really high-end lens, it's going to be a fairly high f-stop, and that's going to reduce the sensitivity. I mean, you're going to have to increase the sensitivity of the sensor to get a good exposure on that. So that's probably where your noise is coming from. Noise from digital transmission over the lines is going to show up as what we call sparkles, which are little tiny dots that appear around on side, not noise necessarily, but little tiny dots that are completely incongruous with the color surrounding it. So it looks like, you'll see a green dot in the middle of a black background or something, and it just sparkles, and they're constantly coming and going. And so that's what you'll see if you have a bad connection or you're losing data in your transmission line. So you can look for that. That's how the noise looks on a digital transmission. But I think what you've got there is not enough light on your subject for the lens and the ISO that you're setting.
Next question.
Ronnie Settle from La Plata, Maryland. I recently purchased a ZVE1 full-frame camera with a kit lens from Sony, an FE 28-60mm f4 to 5.6 lens. What is the next lens you would purchase for this camera?
Samuel?
Well, it really depends what you can use it for. There's not really a one-size-fits-all lens. It really it comes down to your use case. But if you want a zoom lens, then Sony makes some good G-Master lenses for full frame. The 24-70, 2.8, for example, would be a good option. I would also look at if you really want a long range a lens, then Sigma and Tamron make a lot of good lenses, but I would look at the 35 to 150. It's f2 to f2.8, so it's quite a fast lens in a very long zoom range.
Alex?
Yeah, the one that we typically get next is the 28 to 135 f4. Although the f4 is a little closed, that's going to give you a very wide range of what you need. That's a G Master lens. Other than that, I would probably, the typical ones are the 28 or 24 to 70 is I think Sony makes one of those. It's a 2.8. And so the 2.8 is going to obviously take full advantage. The nice thing about the full frame is that you're still going to get a great bokeh even at 4, but the 2.8 is going to give you a little bit more light. So the camera, the lens that I get for almost every camera that I use is a 28 to 70. Like that's like I'm going to go through most of the wide shots and most of the long shots that I need, and then after that I get specialty lenses. Now the lens that I have for this camera is a little different. I'm getting a fixed lens. So this is a fixed 35 and it'll go to 1.4. So that's the getting a nice fixed lens, a 50 or a 35. A 50 for yours. I mean, almost everybody wants a really good 50 or a really good 85 for portrait shooting.
Mr. FX3 full frame Mitchell?
Sorry. I have the lens that Alex just mentioned, the 2870 2.8, and it gives me a fine bokeh. But I have a little inside knowledge. I've spent time with Ronnie on After Hours, and he's going to use it as a webcam. So, having a zoom is handy. But the lens, the kit lens, the art lens that he's using currently, looks great. I think you need to lock it down, Ronnie, and step back and save that money, put it in your back pocket, unless you expect to take that camera out and run around with it. But if I were in the mood to buy a lens, I would do exactly what Alex said. I would find what I'm happy with the zoom, and then translate to a prime that works great, and get just a little bit more bokeh.
And Ronnie?
Yeah, and the question is, what is the next lens? We use a lot of the 1635, is it that it's called, f4. We use that a lot for wide shots when we are on the stage or somewhere that is similar. So I would get one wide angle as well. And of course, I support everything. 2470 is the standard 2.8. And look for G or G Master lenses from Sony. The zoom and focus engine inside the camera is really, really awesome when you're using that. And if you're going to looking for birds or other stuff that you need to be zooming in on, we use the 200-600 with a 1.4 or 2.0 teleconverter as well. That is really, really awesome.
Nigel?
Of course, the Sony lenses are great, but the Sigma lenses are pretty good as well. I have the 35mm 1.4. It's a beautiful lens.
And Mitch, wrap us up.
Yeah, I was just going to say what Nigel said. There are other lens companies you could go with. Sigma's a great second choice. It's about the third of the price of a Sony lens, and it does pretty much. The only thing that the Sony lens is convenient is that, first of all, the autofocus is going to play really nice with the body electronics and the body of the camera. And it's a little bit faster that way. And in some cases, the metadata that the lens sends to the camera body allows for you to steady the shot even more than the automatic steadying does.
Next question.
Next question for Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I now have room for a setup. Should my setup face my big windows or the wall in this new space?
Nigel?
Well, my first advice is not to face any windows at all and put blackout curtaining in. And if you can black out the room entirely, then I think you can control the light a lot better. I suspect if you don't want to do that, then looking into the sunlight is probably better than having it coming from behind you. If you have it coming from behind you, you are going to be managing that through sunrise and sunset. If you're doing production and you're trying to get this sort of quality picture out of it. If it's coming towards you, you're still going to have to manage sunrise and sunset and shadows and clouds, but it'll be easier to do. But the best option is to black out the whole room and manage the light yourself.
Alex, you've got some windows in there.
I blacked them all out. I didn't black them all out. There's one over here that still drives me crazy during the day. In the morning, it doesn't bother me because the sun isn't there yet. But I recommend, left to my own devices, I will always black a room out and then take over. So it's exactly what Nigel said. It's just a pain in the neck to deal with constantly changing light. So I think that I would, it's the seasons. It's different every day. It's so I blocked out most of the light. I have a huge window right in front of me, but it's covered by lots of things. Like I have literally layers of blankets to make sure that none of that light goes through. So I would get rid of it. It'd be great for you to take a bunch of photos, or better yet, if you have Polycam, build a little model for us. Let us see what your new room is, and we can definitely give you feedback. We'd love to work with you, Tony, on making the best set you can build.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with everything said so far. If you can, unlike my own situation, if you can black out the windows, you can. But since this is my living room and these are French doors, I can't really black them out. So I have this problem every day at this time of the year where the sun rises over my left shoulder over here, and it smacks me in the side of the head with a really uncontrollable amount of light. And I have to adjust my fill light throughout the show as that sun hits direct, and then it moves up to indirect during the 2-hour show that we're on. So I'm constantly having to adjust not only the brightness of the aperture, automatic aperture can take care of a lot of stuff, but it can't change the color balance. I mean, the light balance between the fill and the light that's coming through the windows. So if it's in front of you, the windows are in front of you, it's a lot easier to control because you're not trying to adjust the fill. It's nice broad light coming in from the front. Then you only have to control the level of that, and auto iris can affect that pretty consistently. And it can also, color temperature management can be controlled as well inside the camera with automatic color settings. But when you have a source of light that's artificial and a source of light that's natural, it's really hard to adjust the color balance and or the brightness difference between those two if it's not directly in front of you.
Mitch?
Yeah, I want to throw my 2 cents in for face the window, block the window. It seems to work. I have a beautiful window in front of me that overlooks a park area, and it worked great in the early hours or early days of office hours. But then they built a glass research building across from me, and at just a certain time of day, light hits it and goes in weird patterns, which is something you can't really compensate for with your lighting. So it's blocked out, just as it's been suggested.
Next question.
Next question from Ian Alford in London. Medium-sized public hall, medium levels of ambient light, low budget, weekly setup, and pack down. I need to show videos on large screens to the gathered audience. What projector and screen solutions do you suggest?
Alex?
Within a lower budget, I would get a daylight screen typically, and I would get the most expensive Epson projector that I can afford. So those are I think that I've used a lot of different projectors. I've had some BenQs, I've had a lot of other ones, but inside of a lower budget, there's definitely, if you start going into the 10, 15,000 and above, there's a lot of other options. But I think that the Epsons in the price range under $5,000, I think are probably the best out there. As Epson, for me, the success has been either Epson or BenQs under $5,000. And then the daylight screens have been very successful for what we do.
Next question.
Matthew LeCount from Oakland, California. While chatting about refoaming yesterday, there was no mention of denser Kaizen types of foam. Has anyone deployed more durable alternatives to pick and pull?
Alex?
Yeah, the Kaizen foam is, it requires, I think, usually once we go to Kaizen foam, this is like sheets of foam that are actually really high quality, and they use them in tools a lot. We see them in tools where they cut out, but usually you need something that's going to cut them out. It's one big sheet. So if you're using that type of foam, a sheet of foam, you're either going to need to have some kind of laser cutter, which aren't very expensive. You can get relatively low-cost laser cutters to cut your foam for you, or you're going to send it out. But once we start doing that, most of us just send it out for someone else to use that foam and cut it for us and then deliver it. So I think that's where we were talking about yesterday.
Courtney?
Yeah, I did talk about the ethafoam, which is this type of foam. It's not the polyester. It usually has a healed surface. So it has a water impermeable surface because the top edges of them are sealed. And it lasts a lot longer. It does not degrade under UV or oxygen, which can turn the other foams to dust or goo after a while. So ethafoam, and the trick to cutting it, if you're going to cutting your own, if you don't have your own giant laser, like Captain Mr. Evil, use a bread knife, serrated bread knife, or electric carving knife actually works pretty good with the two oscillating blades that go back and forth like that. Pretty good for cutting thick foam, that's 2 or 3 inches deep. And that's what I use.
Mitch?
Yeah, I was +1 on that, Courtney, with the electric knife to usually do turkey carving. Make sure you clean the blade after you're done trimming the foam. And the other kind of foam that I'm wondering about, and maybe the same thing, is called ballistic foam. It's the kind of stuff that you see used in packing a lot. Sometimes that makes for a very good alternative, and it's not that expensive.
Next question.
Next one in from Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. Just signed up for YouTube TV 4K Plus, which promises an ultra-high-definition stream of the Super Bowl. I'm an Xfinity customer near Hartford, Connecticut. Will my ISP be able to handle the load on their network?
Mitch?
We'll see. I'm also an Xfinity customer, and I'm also signed up for that ultra-high definition. So it'll be interesting what happens because the ISP, what is the term, Alex, that 99% of the bandwidth is used by 1% of the users. Maybe we'll be one of those 1%ers.
Alex?
YouTube TV is still not big enough, and especially the 4K is not big enough to really affect the ISPs. So when you look at the overall draw from many of the streaming platforms, this is not going to even, I would be surprised if the 4K solutions are going to even show up on their radar. There might be a little bit of a blip. In general, people are going to be using a lot of bandwidth as they go through these things. And so I think that could be the case. The ISPs have I don't know with YouTube what they have, but they have the capability of manipulating the manifests on the way. A manifest is, this is what I'm delivering to you. And the ISPs have the capability of removing the top options from the manifest. So if they get it under pressure, they have ways of doing that on the fly. So they can just say, take this one out, and it'll take it out of all the manifests going to all the players, and the players don't even know that those exist. But I also, as a reminder, that I believe that CBS has already said that they're doing a 1080 show and upscaling to 4K. So you're watching an upscaled version to 4K if you're purchasing 4K for the Super Bowl.
For what it's worth, I watched both of the championship games 2 weeks ago at about 14 feet on the 4K stream, projected onto a really big screen, and man, they looked really good. It's really the graphics look really. You look at the graphics and you're just like, wow. And the footage is pretty good, but the graphics are really good.
Yeah, I will say that YouTube TV has come a long way. When they first started playing football games, you're like, ooh, I don't know if they should do this. Like, I don't think this is ever going to be watchable. And now it's better than broadcast. It is absolutely better than watching on Comcast, because the Comcast is actually compressing it more than YouTube is. And so these feeds the YouTube feeds are clearer than what you would get from your cable provider.
I was getting teased by someone who had the souped up 4K super duper Comcast or Xfinity package, and then I went to their house to watch a game, and they turned on the 4K channel. I was like, really?
Yeah,
this
is
really what
4K?
You're paying money for this? That's no way to live.
Yep.
Next question.
Don Modine in Manchester, Connecticut. How does the football pylon camera work to be able to wirelessly send full video in such a small space and not get destroyed when hit?
Courtney?
Well, I'd hazard to guess, because I don't know, but I would hazard to guess that just the sensors and the lenses are, very small phone size sensors are in those pylon. 4K phone sensors are inside those pylons, and they're probably run out by cable. I doubt they're gone wirelessly. They're probably run under cable to some type of package that's off the side of the field. So if they get hit, they probably have another replacement they can just go and plug in. If it tears the wires out, et cetera. I doubt that they'd put batteries in them and transmission and trust that in something that is as important as the Super Bowl, especially since they use those pylon cameras for referees' reference in case of close calls.
Alex?
Yeah, I believe that those pylons are all wired to where they are there. So I think that's a wired setup. So I don't think that they're wireless at all. And when you think about the quality of the cameras or whether they can handle it, imagine putting your iPhone into something that was kind of that was soft and kicking it. Probably be okay. So and the sensors are probably not that much different than what you're seeing on any earphones, as Courtney said.
Mitch?
Yeah, and does the Boink camera make the sound when it gets hit, or is that just a nickname for
I think
it?
the Boink, if you actually hit the Boink camera, it might actually damage it. But it would take I'm sure that the math of that would be very, very difficult because it would have to be the point. It would have to be the point of the football would have to hit the camera, so it'd have to be spinning in just the right motion and hit just the right upright. So I think that the chances of actually damaging the Boink camera would be very, low, and those are calculated. If you actually damage the camera, it would just make a great part of the show. So if the camera blew up and out, it would just be even better, because then they get to talk about it for 2 minutes before they go to the, they get to show replays of it and everything else and talk about how amazing that was. So it wouldn't matter.
But it would be cool if it actually made the sound. Boink.
It does make the sound. If you've ever been there, the reason they call it a Boink camera is because when the football hits it, it definitely doing, you definitely hear it. So
it's a big old tuning fork. Next question.
Coming in from Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway, and here in our panel, how can I add zoom and focus demand to a Sony A7S3 using primarily Sony G and GM Grandmaster lenses? Obviously need a zoom servo since most lenses do not have zoom motors. What servo and what controls? We do this using DJI Ronin S2. What else is there?
Go ahead, Alex.
The 28 to 135 that we talked about earlier does have a motored lens, so that you can apply that. If you put that on your A7S3, you can control it on its own. And we do that with the FR7s relatively frequently. And so that'd be the first step that I would look at there. And then of course you're talking about, oftentimes when we jump to the next level of lens control, most of us are talking about Prestons. So Preston are the ones but there's also ones from Arri and C-Motion. I think Mickey mentioned those as well. But Prestons are usually, when we're not talking about a DJI motor or a variety of those, it's usually we jump to Prestons.
Mitch?
And also consider Tilta has a full line in their ecosystem to control geared lenses with their Nano 2 and the Tilta.
And the challenge really is resolution. So with the Tilta and the DJI ones, your resolution is going to be a little lower. And so that just means that the fine tuning of what you're doing is not going to be there. And so if you're talking to a real DP that is used to these Preston motors and Preston lenses and Arri or C-Motion, they're going to be used to a resolution as they turn that is just not that the less expensive ones just aren't capable of producing.
Next question.
From Jacob Goodnight in Indianapolis, Indiana. Has anyone used MoCa adapters to provide Ethernet over coax for homes that only have coaxial cable run to various rooms? Any model recommendations?
Go ahead, Alex.
I don't have any recommendations. I will tell you that we have tempted it both through power and through coax and not been successful. It's low bandwidth, messy, spotty, hasn't worked for us. So that's my 2 cents.
Mitch?
And the irony is that before there was Ethernet, there was coax. So it's kind of interesting that it's moved that way, maybe back again.
I don't know if it's back again. It's just if you have an old house that already has coax wires, you're tempted to try and run the internet signal over that wire. But it's like Alex said, it has a lot of challenges. Courtney?
Yeah, I'd be careful because a lot of in-home cable connections inside rooms are run through a cable distribution amp, which is designed for RF frequencies that are in the television broadcast, and they have notch filters in there to filter out interference. So you may have trouble if it runs through any type of distribution amplifier inside the house.
Alex?
The one thing that the coax is really good for is if you carefully tape the Ethernet cable to the coax cable, and you wrap it really tightly, you can pull the Ethernet cable through the house, and use the coax cable as a feed to get it from one place to the other. So that is a way you can use the coax cable. Unfortunately, a lot of times that coax cable is attached to things on the way out, so you have to kind of figure that out. But this is also, if you ever decide you're going to actually go through, bite the bullet and do something and really make that adjustment, I think that what you want to think about is building pipes that will let you get from one place to the other in the future. This is a good example. If you're listening to this and you're building a house or designing one, conduit is your friend. 1.5 inch minimum, and I would, if I was going to build this house again, I put 3-inch conduits in to everything, because it's so nice and inexpensive when you do it when you're building, and such a bummer when you don't.
Mitch, real quick.
Yeah, if you insist on using the the cable, make sure it's not CATV cable and it's RJ6.
All right, that's going to take us to the top of the first hour. Want to remind everybody that we do have our Office Hours panelist meeting coming up today at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. That is happening once a month. And so if you were at the new panelist meeting last week and now you know how to get in and how to get started, this is going to be more of the nuts and bolts of how are we actually, what's new and what do we need to know about going forward. So stay tuned for that. And welcome back to the second hour. We've got room for more questions, or we have more questions here to answer, so let's dive right into those.
Hey, Schultz from Los Angeles has a question. I found this channel when searching for info on the Sony FR7. Your videos from a year ago described it as disrupting the PTZ market. A year later, does the panel still feel the same way?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, I see what you were thinking, and I was on the fence a little bit earlier last year. And after they released the firmware 2.0, I really there is no reason why not to get this camera, except for the price, of course. Compared to others, it's still leading on, and of course, other vendors will be following their steps.
Alex?
I think it depends on what you need a PTZ camera for. If Tlaloc was asking about pan-tilt zooms earlier, and he was looking for an outdoor camera that probably needs a long throw. That's not what the FR7 does well. So the FR7 is not going to give you a 20x outdoor lens. But if you are doing things that are in studio that are shorter than 20 feet, that you want it to look cinematic or really great, or you're doing a small studio or an event where you can put the cameras wherever you'd like them, there is nothing like this camera. Like this camera it looks so nice. This is the same sensor as the FX6 inside of a camera that you can remote control, and you can remote control. We oftentimes do interviews, and what we'll do is we'll have an FX6 on the end so that we can have a handheld when people are walking up on stage. And then we typically have 4 FR7s that are there that are managing all the in-betweens, and we have one person operating those. It's less people in front of the audience. It's a lower cost. It's actually more control, and they look amazing, And so it's a really, really great PTZ for that environment. But there's lots of places where that environment is not sufficient. If you're in a large facility, for instance, that you want 20Xs on the back, I don't like to watch those kinds of shows, so I tend not to think about them that much, but they are out there.
Next question.
It's a QR code question from Gabriana Exasio Mistera from Saint Sault Marie. No radio today for the live show when it starts. What kind of tech problems keep causing these kinds of setbacks in just audio? Should I just plan every time to watch later instead of live to make it easier on the show?
Go ahead, Alex.
I don't know. We don't promise to have audio before the show starts. I think the audio is running right now. I mean, I believe that the radio runs almost every day. In fact, I think it is every day. So I think it's very rare for the radio not to work during the show. We're not promising anything before the show. So as far as watching it later, I mean, we are live on YouTube every single 6 days a week. So JJ keeps the audio running though, and it should be running from the time we start the show at 7 a.m. until the end of the show. It is running live. We're not promising anything before that. So and probably but when the broadcast starts, you should be able to hear it live. And again, we're live on YouTube 6 days a week. So there's not really any reason to come back and watch it later, but you're more than welcome to. We put it on YouTube so that you can. And
I did get a ping from Chad that the audio is up now. So if you were having any trouble earlier, give it another shot.
I don't think there's been any trouble. I mean, I think at 7 a.m., I think people in the past, we've had it before that. For a variety of reasons, we're probably not going to do that all the time. But at 7 a.m., you should hear the audio, and you should see it on YouTube. And we've got a great team on the back end that makes that happen.
All right, next question.
Don Modine from Manchester, Connecticut. Will AR/VR get to a point where we can watch live sports from the perspective of being on the field and able to walk around?
Go ahead, Nigel.
I don't know about on the field, but I'm really guessing in the stands. And being on the field to me is a metaphor of actually really being in the game. And you can't do that unless you're actually on the field and you're a part of the action. But I do think you will be able to do it from the stands from multiple vantage points, to zoom in, to zoom out and see different things. How much you're really going to want to do that, I think, is another question. I think there'll be moments where you say, can I see that replay from 3 different cameras? If I stood somewhere else in the stands or high or low, would I get a different perspective? But I think if you end up doing that a lot and throughout the game or throughout the sport, you're going to leave the sport behind. You're going to leave the action behind. You're going to miss the narrative because you're going to be creating your own, which may or may not be a good thing. I actually think probably motor racing, those sorts of longer, continuous sports, it'll work better. But that's because there's multiple storylines going on all the time.
Courtney?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched a football game or a rugby game or soccer game from on the field. It is not a very good place to watch the game. You can, there's people standing in front of you all the time. There's photographers that force their way in front of you. If you had AR that could make everybody in the foreground invisible, maybe, but you still can't see the play. You don't get the overview. There's a reason they put the cameras up in the press box level of the stadiums to get an overview, aerial view, or an elevated view of the play field or the pitch so that you can see everything that's going on and you're not blocked by being at ground level point of view where you're having to see around people. So I think it would be of limited use to have AR from on the field unless you want to isolate one particular player and just watch that person throughout a play and not really care about what else is going on the field.
Alex?
You're seeing they've been testing a lot of things in this area for about the last decade. And so there's little bits and pieces. The NFL is always trying to find a better way to do this. And so they have the most money, as far as spending this. And so a lot of times, like those pylon cameras, I think those were in the pylons for 4 years, 3 or 4 years before you ever saw them on a broadcast because they're just trying to figure out how to make them work. So a lot of this technology is there. You can see early versions of this technology actually in the Monday ESPN things with Peyton Manning, the Manning brothers. Peyton Manning has this kind of AR thing where he's showing the play and he can pick people up and move them around and circle things, but it's showing a play that happened relatively recently. And the way that they're doing that, and if you want to see the technology that's making that work, you want to look at Wonder Dynamics. So Wonder Dynamics is taking a video and it's converting it to 3D movement of a character. And that's what they're actually doing with some of these things. So one of the things about a lot of these sports is they're scanning most of these players. So they literally have an RV that will pull up, and the players will spend a couple minutes before the game, or long before the game. They each spend 2 or 3 minutes in there, and they do a T pose, and they do a couple of different movements, and then they do a whole bunch of expressions and everything else, and they capture about 150 photos at a time. And they get those, they turn those into 3D models of them. So they have very accurate versions of the 3D models of most of these players. And then that's for like the Madden football and so on and so forth. Now what they're doing with those is now they take the AI data and they're shooting the field from a lot of different directions. So they're shooting the field from lots of points. And they're basically tracking the motions of them. Now, at first they thought that they were going to use point clouds from those, but the point clouds are very low resolution. And what they found was that it was better to use these as tracking tools to drive the 3D characters that already exist. So now you can get, and the motion is starting to get more and more and more accurate of being able to capture literally every player on the field. Right now, it can't be done in real time, but obviously with more horsepower, we think that'll start to pick up speed. I will agree that in general, it's not very viewable, but for a certain play of being able to see what it's like to be the linebacker or walk around where the ref was or walk around where the things are. There's lots of things there that could be really interesting for you to understand. Also, you get very clear if you look at some of these things, when you look at some of the tests of why quarterbacks have to be 6'3" or 4 because they can't see over the line. The coolest one that I've seen so far is there's a couple tests. They didn't do it in the NFL, but in the NCAA, they've done some tests where they have cameras on the helmet of the quarterback, and you get to watch the quarterback go through progressions and then throw the ball. And you realize, whatever you think a good quarterback and bad quarterback are, you have no idea how hard that job is. It is the most, like when they walk up, you watch them moving around and they're looking at things, and you can tell that they're looking at what the defense is doing, how it's going to work, and then they have to pull back. It is an incredibly complicated thing. It makes me nervous. It made me very stressed just watching the video. So it's an amazing, but all that technology is coming. The closest thing we're going to get to it next year is the Vision Pro. If you get the Vision Pro and you find the demo in the Vision Pro, there's a demo, and one thing what we all expected is they have a 3D 180-degree camera on the top of the MLS goal. It's compelling. I wouldn't want to watch the whole game from there, but when they get into that goal area and you see 3D, you see the soccer players in 3D, it's pretty cool. So anyway, stay tuned for more of that.
After having the Vision for just over a week, I was thinking a lot about how would I want to experience a live event in this. And I was like, the Alicia Keys thing was cool because I could look to my left and look to my right and look around. But I didn't like it when they switched cameras. I wanted to just sit in the same spot. So it's boring for production people to think you're just going to put a 180 camera in a single spot and just let it roll. But as a viewer, I would just, put 3 or 4 of those out there. That's where I want to sit.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
It's a QR code question coming from Eric Strand in Essex, Connecticut. Seems like there's more reports of companies moving away from the cloud and back to local storage. Is that a trend anyone has seen with their clients?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I haven't seen that trend at all. It could be different from area to area and country to country. And we have everything out in the cloud, and we of course have local storage for everything that we are working on in the production company. So editing videos, for instance, is of course done with quick drives locally, and then synchronized out for input from clients using Frame.io or similar tools. And then when everything is done, we send it to cold storage, which is in our case is being done at Frame.io or similar sites. And we also use Dropbox and similar storage solutions as well as extra backup.
Alex?
We're definitely seeing different companies coming back to on-prem for a variety of reasons. Number one is cost. So especially for computing resources over long periods of time, we see them pulling back because they start looking at their monthly costs and realize they could probably buy all the hardware that they were using for the same price. And so it really depends on what you're doing there. But I think that there's oftentimes a mix. They're not pulling all of it back, but they're pulling back the constantly used resources back and storage to some degree, obviously. But there's, oftentimes it's a mixture of both. So there's storage in the cloud as a backup to the storage that's on-prem.
Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of talked about this before. If you outsource your storage because you thought it was cheaper, you're going to bring it back because it's more practical to have it local. If you outsourced it or you put it off-prem for flexibility, it's probably still there. But the best way to think about storage really is a hierarchy, that there's everything from the very fastest, which is either on-chip, if you're Apple, or very close to the chip, through cache, through solid state, through disk, through remote disk, and by the way, the fans of LTO will be back to talk to office hours later because there's still a role for even offsite tape if you know what you're doing. But you really got to think about storage as a hierarchy and decide where in that hierarchy the piece of data you're trying to manage is. And that's something about how fast you need it referenced, how fast you need it recovered. And so there's that variety. If you think about it almost like a pyramid, you'll manage your data better.
Next question.
A. Schultz in Los Angeles, California. Is anyone using Arc browser from the browser company?
Courtney?
I am not. I'm on the wait list for Windows users. I think the iOS version is out now. So all of you iOS people that are using it on your iPad or iPhone can chime in and let us know what it's like. It looks interesting. It employs a little artificial intelligence to preview your favorite wants and watches, and it also lets you configure it a lot with the slide out panels that you can configure in the color and the brightness and the size and font text. There's a lot of configuration items in it. So I don't know for sure yet, but I'm on the wait list.
Next question.
Next up, Craig McFarlane with his question. What are the options to add TikTok to a live stream, currently YouTube and Instagram?
Go ahead, Alex.
I don't quite understand the question. And so the question is are you trying to stream to TikTok, or are you trying to add a TikTok video to your live stream? If you're trying to stream to TikTok, I believe that there is an RTMP option for TikTok, but you have to have a certain number of followers to get to it. Otherwise, you're on a phone. And so I have not had to stream to TikTok recently. I did to Musical.ly long ago, but I think that that is the option. If for some reason you need to do it natively, so sometimes you get more organic spread if you use the native streaming on the phone. And to do that, we built these kind of crazy rigs that basically are they are a camera that's tented into a monitor that sees the live stream. And we do it in some cases because Instagram wouldn't allow us to do it any other way. But the other real reason we did it was because oftentimes your organic spread, organic sharing that happens on the platform benefits using the device as opposed to RTMP streaming. And so as a result, people will want to find a way to hack their way into that. And yes, we have done the same show to 3 different platforms using 3 different phones with 3 different monitors. And when you look at it, it's totally absurd because the show was actually coming in from a SAT truck. So the SAT truck was where it needed to be. It came back to our facility, and we put it into 3. I think it was Periscope and something else that we did all, and Instagram and one other platform. That doesn't exist anymore. So there are ways to distribute that. It's annoyingly frustrating to do it, but yeah, there you go.
And would you have anyone managing the center crop of the 16:9, 9:16, or was it just the center?
We taped it on the monitors. This is your live area, so you're sending about 16:9 back, and you just tape the camera monitors and everything else. Like this is what you're using. So that the camera operators know what they're doing. When it comes back, the camera is already in that is in there, and you're framing it. And the key is to use. There are mounts for macro photography that give you very, very fine control over moving the camera back and forth and rotating it forward and back. They're a couple $1,000s each. I mean, they're not like little mounts. These are expensive mounts. They're made in Germany, but you can have micro degrees of rotation in all directions. It's a little ball, as well as micro rotations, because they're trying to take pictures of very small things. And so it turns out that mount is really good for the fine tuning that you need to line it up perfectly with the monitor, because you have to be exactly perpendicular and you have to be at the exact right distance, and you'll get moiré if you don't get it correct. And there's a whole bunch of issues with this, and it does punch the color. It's really hard because you have to tune the color on the monitor. You have to have a monitor that is not a cheap monitor, because you actually need a lot of control over the monitor to get the colors to a point where the camera's going to like it. And it's never perfect, but the average viewer wouldn't notice that we're screwing up the colors a little bit.
Next question.
From David Brady in New York, New York. David asks, some years back, a web streaming vendor we were using shared this tool with me. It's a link to the HLS JavaScript demo site.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is the tool here, HLS.js. And so you can test your HLS streams in here to see how they're going to work. So I am going to bookmark that. I haven't used that before. It's really cool. So yeah, I'm going to keep that.
Courtney?
Yeah, I was just looking at it. It's quite amazing. It lets you when you're having playback issues. It would seem it has the ability, while you're playing back, to extract a great deal of information that it presents here in real time of your buffer speed, your all the details, and you have all these playback statistics that you can go through and look at your timeline, your quality levels, check out your audio tracks. Real-time metrics, which is what I was showing before, and your buffer statistics are all there and updated in real time. And you can look at the manifest. Looks like quite a useful tool to have to debug those problems that you may be having with your streams.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, asked, I've got Wi-Fi 6 in my home. Do I have to have wired Ethernet connection in my new room?
Ronnie?
There is nothing that actually replaces a cable. Either it's Ethernet cable or fiber. So even if you upgrade to Wi-Fi 6, which is good, and of course increases the speed and performance for the units that can utilize that, you never know when your neighbor or neighbors are adding stuff into that same frequency and start to chew on the total bandwidth that Wi-Fi 6 is giving. So use a cable, and if you're building something new, always add cables.
Nigel?
So let's go back a step. What is the speed of the data coming into the property? Because if you are lucky enough to have a 1 gig or a 2.5 gig or something, then if you want anything like that speed, you're going to have to wire it from wherever your router is into the room. So that's the first thing, because Wi-Fi 6 won't get to that speed. The second thing, Wi-Fi 6 and mesh extenders are great in principle. In practice, a lot of the consumer-based ones you get from your manufacturer, from your cable provider, aren't the greatest quality products. You can buy ones, at a retailer or at a Best Buy or something that are better, but they're not terribly reliable. And if you have a house full of gadgets, that mesh is going to talk to itself. And if you put multiple mesh extenders in, they're going to spend a lot of time talking to themselves. So while you actually might at one instance get 500-600 meg through this thing when nothing else is going on in the house, the moment something else is going on in the property, you're going to find a huge drop. But again, start at the beginning. What is coming into the house? Because that might be more than the mesh network could extend. But as Ronnie said, always go wide.
Alex?
I have a mesh network in my house, and I'm just getting ready to replace it because it's a disaster. I mean, it's just a complete disaster. And so it doesn't work. I can't even stream from it. I can't do anything from it. Like, it's just, and I'm in the process of re-architecting it right now. I'll have it updated probably the next month or two. But it's just been, years of me going, I'm going to try to fix this. I'm going to try to get it to work, and I'll never use a mesh again. But what I will say related to Wi-Fi is it doesn't matter how fast your connection is. It doesn't matter how good your AP if the AP says hi, they don't need to use the Wi-Fi. If the AP says hi, your access point says hi to any device, you will lose frames. You'll have audio breakdown. So if you're in the country where no one is around you and no one is at home except for you, and you're staying in one place, your Wi-Fi will work as well as your Ethernet. That is the only time that will happen. If you live with a house within 150 feet of your house, people driving by, walking by, thinking of walking by, every time that AP touches another device on the Wi-Fi network and says hi, you lose frames. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a 1 gig connection, a 10 gig connection, a 100 gig connection, it's going to lose frames. That's how, because you don't notice it when 99.99999% of the people who use Wi-Fi, they will never notice that loss, that packet loss. The only time you notice that packet loss is when you're in a real-time audio-video pipeline like what we do here, and that's when you lose it. So no one else notices. Like, I don't understand. Wi-Fi works all the time. It's really fast. Da, 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 da. But in synchronous audio and video is very unforgiving, and it's not what Wi-Fi was designed to do, and it's not a large enough market for them to solve it. And you have to get wired if you care.
Ronnie?
Yeah, following Mobley's channel and production, which is kind of going straight up, he probably needs to add Dante audio or something similar as well. And Dante does not play well with Wi-Fi. It doesn't play at all.
Next question.
And a question from Chetelflor, Yoxfold, and Tromso. Has anyone tried the new Keynote feature in Apple Vision Pro? You can now rehearse your keynote in the Apple Conference Center stage.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, you can. you can now jump on it. If you want to practice and feel like you're at the Apple stage, I guess that makes sense. I don't feel like when I do presentations that I feel the need to have some kind of something that is inside of it, like the presentation are the images that I'm showing you and the videos that I'm showing you. If you want to practice on that and feel like you're there, I guess it kind of makes sense. But and I just and I will say that what you're missing from the Apple stage is the really good LED wall behind the hundreds of speakers that are in the Apple stage and the super cushy seats so they're very, very nice seats. And so those things aren't there. So you're kind of having this facsimile of what the Apple stage is like to stand on. But I will say that if you want to rehearse it on the Apple stage or feel like you're in a conference room, it's kind of fun. I think it's a fun thing. I'm glad they did it. I think it's cool that they put it in there. I don't know why I would use it because when I'm rehearsing, I guess all my presentations come from home. So that's the other thing for me is I'm not as sensitive to it because I literally at this point can't do most of my presentations in a venue because I would have to bring too much hardware, because my presentations use all of my computers. And I can't just go up on a laptop and do a presentation anymore because once you get used to being able to have multiple computers and telestrators and everything else, I have a presentation I'm doing in Berkeley in March, and Berkeley's 45 minutes from me, and I was like, how about I just come in virtually? like how about I just it's easier for me to do the presentation here than for me to try to figure out what hardware you're going to have when I come into the venue, and so I guess I may not be the right person to comment on this. I feel that I did comment on it, but I'm probably not the right person.
Well, the only thing that when I was doing it and I looked behind me and my presentation was behind me on a big wall, I said, well, that's cool, but I should never turn my back to the audience and look at that screen. So
I find that to be a fascinating problem in general is this idea that we want to draw, like even when you see it in the news, when someone's drawing on the screen or pointing to the screen or they want to do it, it feels very much like new wine and old wineskins. Mm-hmm. I have this new thing, I have all this data, and now I feel like I have to touch a screen. And I'm like, we don't have to do that anymore. We can just move on, And so I don't think that a lot of that, I think that that's a lot of theater that producers who have probably been in the industry for 20 years before we had all this technology, they want to feel comfortable doing that, but I don't think the user needs that. I mean, I think that if you watch YouTube, they're not doing that. Most people are not doing any of those things. So the next generation doesn't need any of those things. I think it's the last generation of producers that want to do all these old things. And so I think that we'll eventually work our way through that.
I do think it's pretty cool for students as they're learning how to imagine that there's an audience there and look at your presenter display and go through what that feeling's going to be like. I'm happy that they're getting some of the training wheels on the presentation software as it is, so that when this is more accessible to students who are learning how to, instead of write papers, do decks and demos, which we've discussed is the right way, because that's what matters, they're going to get a lot better.
Yeah.
Next question.
And it's from Kyle Hammond from Chicago, Illinois. What are current recommendations for docks for Mac Mini or MacBook Pro to have more I/O?
Go ahead, Alex.
Generally, all the stuff I get now is OWC. So I don't really have a lot of experience with anything else at this point because those are the ones that have worked the most consistently and been the most reliable for me.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I have all OWC docks, and the main one I'm using is called the Thunderbolt dock, which is a great, clever name to use. And for your MacBook Pro, they have a mobile version, which is kind of interesting.
Next question.
Next one from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Can pan-tilt zoom cameras still be controlled via Zoom if the participants enables camera control?
Samuel?
Yeah, if you have a webcam with UVC controls that connects over USB, and some of the inexpensive bigger PTZ cameras have this, but I don't think there's a way to do it with real PTZ cameras with Visca protocols.
Go ahead, Alex.
I love the idea that you could potentially use Visca to control or something to control a real one from Zoom. That'd be great, but most of them are built for it. They've gone through a process with Zoom to figure out, to have their PTZs work, and most of them are the webcams. I know that the Insta360 link definitely works in those areas, as does the OBSBot.
Next question.
Håkon Foss from Stockholm, Sweden. Any recommendations for where to buy tactical fiber cables in Scandinavian?
Alex?
I don't know where it is. I was wondering if I don't know where you would find them even in Europe. Clark Cable is what we use here in the United States, or at least what I've used in the past. And I don't know whether they have an international representation or not. And I was just holding the ground until Ronnie raised his hand.
Ronnie?
I think you should try at Benum, find out who is delivering products from Benum in your area. I think they will be sufficient to provide. Beware of prices, though.
Next question.
Greg Scott, Vancouver, Canada. I've reconnected my Sonos One and added the YouTube music. Is there a tag or encoding the team can add to office hour videos so they can be played back from a YouTube music playlist on the Sonos?
Alex?
We'll take a look. No, I haven't thought of that. I have a whole bunch of Sonoses, but they bricked them all, of course, and so I haven't been able to. So they're not as useful to me anymore. Not that I'm bitter. Anyway, so but I think that we'll take a look at what the tags are. I think it's just a podcast tag, which I believe we have, but we'll check on that.
Samuel?
Yeah, you can add a podcast to a playlist, make a playlist, a podcast, but at least here in Norway, then it hasn't been opened up for YouTube Music yet, but I think in the US it's opened, so it'll probably come here soon.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith from Chautauqua, New York. I need to clear out my Google Drive, but want to save the files I have there on an external hard drive. I have drives for desktop setups so it can copy over the files. Can I still access them later in Docs and Sheets?
I'm not sure if you'll be able to access them in Docs and Sheets. The biggest worry I would have there is access control, because as you put permissions on Sheets and do some other more proprietary things that are tied to your login, it's difficult to open them up. So if you are going to clear out the drive and save stuff for archival purposes, I would go with something that is more common, like a .doc or a .txt or even a PDF if you don't need to edit it in the future. Next question.
Håkan Fors from Stockholm, Sweden. Recommendation for long-term slow access data storage in the cloud.
Go ahead, Samuel.
I would take a look at a Glacier from OWC. It takes a longer to access it than the S3, but it's a lot cheaper.
Sorry, go ahead, Courtney.
I've just been using Carbonite for many years just as a tertiary backup, because I have everything backed up on 2 hard drives on 2 different computers and a NAS locally. And then I have several folders that are pointed to that have, financial data and that kind of stuff that I have to access that I want to archive and remain archived. Those are monitored by Carbonite and backed up to the cloud. So luckily I haven't, my other 2 backups have served me well, and I haven't had to resort to downloading and restoring data from the Carbonite cloud, but I still pay for it. It's about $5 a month for a basic plan. And that has served me pretty well. But that's only for a single computer with any number of folders on that one computer.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think you've got a couple of calculations you've got to think about. And Courtney just gave you one, which is how many people need to access it, how many devices need to access it, how much do you want to store, and how long do you want to store it for. So if you look at Glacier or S3 or some of that stuff, they're going to instantly strike you as so much more expensive than a lot of incredible offerings you're going to find on the internet from companies that may not be there next week. So be really sensitive. Ask yourself how much, how frequently, what speed, and how important is that? How valuable is that data? If it's really just a convenience thing and it's not a lot, then Dropboxes and the rest of them, for all the problems they have, iDrive, all of that stuff, is actually not a bad solution. If this is very important, very valuable data that you need access to in large amounts, you need to go with a full-scale Glacier type solution, because otherwise you're going to find yourself lost when that data you need that data. Remember, the problem is never backing up. Backing up is easy. It's the recovery that's hard.
Ronnie?
User interface is also some question. If you need an easy-to-use solution, Glacier is probably not the way to go, even if you can try to learn it and do it the right way. We use Glacier as well, but we are also using Frame.io, cold storage version, which is cheaper than the normal Frame.io, but a good way to go. So ease of use is also an important factor.
And one other twist that I'll put into this is I'm actually going to advocate, even though it's kind of local, get something like a Synology where you have, if you're talking long term, get a Synology RAID where you have hard copies, physical copies of it, or local copies at least, in your home or in your office that are accessible via the cloud through Synology Drive or a solution like that. So you kind of have an in-between service where you still have that accessibility, and it's not going to be the fastest storage in the world online, but you have access. And then if anything ever happens, you can unplug that Synology and you still have those files. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael with a question. Funimation is shutting down and users are losing their permanent anime libraries. Could you see regulators ever enforcing library portability?
Yeah, this is a bummer because anybody who likes some of the Funimation titles like Dragon Ball Z, and if they bought a bunch of them on Crunchyroll, they're going to see those going away. It's one of the kind of the warning stories that we get about digital content online. When you buy it, you're not really buying it; you're licensing it to have it on your system. If for whatever reason my credit card that's attached to Apple expires, everything that I ever bought from Apple is boom unavailable to me. And so I'm not sure if we'll get regulators to come and look at an issue like this, but I think unfortunately it's going to take something that is more impactful to more people to get folks' attention. Maybe if somebody buys the Eras Tour and somebody takes it offline, then that'll get enough people riled up. Next question.
Next question from Andre Dole in Berlin. I've got a laptop with 2 external monitors. Where in Keynote can I adjust which monitors are used for presentation and notes and which monitors not used for Keynote?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I don't have the answer, but I'm hoping Alex is adding to this. I would like to do this as a scriptable thing so that every time I start something, I know that is preset to something. Is that possible, Alex?
Alex actually dropped, but I'll hop in here. So when you're in Keynote and you start a presentation with an external display attached, there will be a little button there for presenter display and presenter display settings. And I was just trying to bring up. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for that, so I will quickly bring up a Keynote here. So here is my Keynote. And when you have a Keynote and you look, I like to use an Apple. My favorite feature, by the way, is if you go up into Help, you can search the menu items. So if you say Show Presenter Display in Window, Customize Presenter Display. When you hit Customize Presenter Display, it'll actually show you, okay, here are all the screens that are attached to your computer, and what do you want where? Current, Next, Presenter Notes. And if I hit Configure, it'll allow me to choose on each of, no matter how many screens you have hooked up to this machine, exactly what you want to put on that screen, the clock, the timer, the ready to advance, the next slide, the notes. And so as your situation changes and your presentation setup changes, that'll allow you to customize it to exactly that show. Next question. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Is this the first time you have taken over for Alex doing these
Keynote
types of guides?
Doing Keynote. Usually a Keynote's an Alex question because we know he's the expert, but I'll dive in. Why not? Next question.
Nice job, CJ.
Cheers.
Next one is coming in for Ronny Hofsoy, who's here on our panel. He's from Tromsø, Norway. Birthday coming up, hint, hint. What chairs are you using? Need a new office hours chair to be able to sit for more than 3 hours straight.
Mitchell?
It's funny you say sit straight because that's really what you need. You need support. And I'm an old fan of the Herman Miller Aran chairs, which, by the way, are readily available because more companies go out of business. They've got like a slew of Aran chairs you can get secondhand. So here's the 2 big things my chiropractor friends tell me is one is you need lumbar lower back support. And the Arans have that little thing that pops in to keep your lumbar straight. And the other part is, believe it or not, is the backs of your legs or your thighs. To have support there that you can raise or lower. And if you have those 2 things going for you, you're going to feel a lot better because you really don't lean back when you do a show. So the headrest really doesn't matter. But that's my 2 cents.
Courtney?
Well, I am personally using the Lazy Boy executive chair. The worst thing about most of these chairs these days is the evil bonded leather. Oh, and I wish there was nobody ever discovered bonded leather. What bonded
Don't wear
leather?
shorts.
Bonded leather means. Now, the problem is after a little bit of sweat gets on it, bonded leather is made up. It's not really leather. It's canvas with finely ground animal parts that are pressed on with an adhesive, substrate to look like leather, but it's really not leather. And so it doesn't wear. It flakes off, and it is wafer thin, tissue thin coating of leather. And so these chairs, only expect them to last about a year and a half to 2 years before you're going to have to replace them, because all the bonded leather becomes unbonded, or it sticks to the back of your thighs, like if you're wearing shorts.
Courtney, how do you feel about Naugahyde?
Naugahyde's better because it doesn't flake off, and it lasts a lot longer and looks about the same, although it is plastic. It doesn't breathe as well. But I like the Lazy Boy because it allows me to shift the weight off of my lower spine by leaning back some, which you'll see me do during this show, because I have to have the ability to lean back and tilt. The important thing is when you lean back, the base has to be attached to the back so that you're shifting the weight off of your back and your legs are coming up. If you have it where the back just goes back, that doesn't work for me because it causes stress on my spine. Then I'm a paraplegic for the rest of the day.
Nigel?
Yeah, I went with the Herman Miller as well, but I went with the Mirror 2. Now, I think Mitchell made a great point. Lots of people going out of business. I don't know near you, but there were always near us sales of office furniture. But I'll give you the but here. They don't always have all the features that you want. Okay, so the office, they might have said, oh, we're giving everybody Herman Miller chairs, but we're going to not put any of the additional things on that give you the flexibility in those chairs. So make sure you go to the website. But the Steelcase is also great. Go to the website, configure the chair you want, dream because they're very expensive, then go and look for one in the secondhand market with those features. But you'd be surprised by the back support, the tilt, the arms, the seat depth. There's a lot of choices in those chairs, and getting that right for you. The other thing, probably not as much for you, Ronnie, but for us, there's actually a Herman Miller store in Texas, in Austin. So I was able to sit in all the chairs first and experience them all and see what all the extras were, and then went and looked for a second-hand version.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I want to add on to that. Herman Miller customer service is about as good as it gets. So if you buy a used one and it's missing, say, the lumbar support bar that goes across, they'll probably, I can't promise, but they'll probably send you a new one for nothing.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas is here. What is the best AI for sorting, classifying, organizing, and cleaning up Google Photos and Apple Photos?
Paul, there's a great app for the Mac called, I'm not sure how AI it is, but it's called Photo Sweeper. It's about $10, and it has a couple different modes that it'll look through, and you can point it at an Apple Photos library or at a folder. So here I'll give you this. So basically what it allows you to do is that you can either choose to compare image to image in terms of what is the hash of this file. So is it the exact same size with the exact same bits in it? It'll compare the file name. So if one has -small or -JPEG, -new. And then there's also a mode that'll look at you can choose how large of a sample you want to take and actually have it be a bitmap. So it'll look for a bitmap and compare the two and then try to find duplicates that way. There's a lot of finite control over what rules you can set. So you can say always prefer the older image, always prefer the larger image, always prefer the image which is a RAW and not a JPEG. And finally, you can go in and choose how fuzzy do you want the matching to be. You can go through and check and to see each individual one, like do a quality check before you just, because I'm very nervous about blindly just saying, okay, go ahead, you can move all those to the trash. And then what it does is it actually, at least in the Apple Photos library, is it won't trash them, but it'll make an album of all of the photos that it marked as duplicates. And then it leaves it up to you to hit the final button to throw them away. Next question.
From Manfred Omer in West Covina, the question is for set and forget theatrical recording from the back of the house. In the case where the footage is overcorrected to be slightly too dim, what is your first tool and Final Cut Pro to increase brightness while maintaining integrity of the image?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, I wouldn't use a tool. I would use Final Cut Pro, or if I would to install something, I would probably install DaVinci Resolve, which has an amazing color corrector. But I would learn to use the tools inside Final Cut, which is also very good.
Yeah, if you don't have the option to fix it in pre and get that, bring those blacks up a little bit, or if maybe you just don't have enough light, if you find after correcting it in Resolve or in Final Cut to be a brighter image, if you find it overly noisy or overly grainy and you have the time, take a look at a tool like Topaz Video. It's going to be a couple $100, but Topaz Video AI has some pretty incredible frame interpolation and noise reduction that I've used it on still and on video images, and it does a bang-up job. Next question.
Håkan Fors from Stockholm, Sweden. Any recommendations for software in Windows that reformats XML files to a better XML or JSON format better suited for displaying and graphics?
Well, Håkan is the resident Mac guy. I'm going to be very, very pleased to throw this to Mr. Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, gee, thanks. I would look at just trying to load it into Copilot because Copilot does have a code version that does beautiful JSON, so that will generate a JSON Windows. So maybe just try and load your XML files into and tell Copilot to reformat it as JSON, and it probably will do it for you.
All right, next question.
Tony Mobley, Newton, Georgia. How do I bring my bookcase into my new space? A10 Mini Pro?
Nigel?
If by that you mean take a picture of it and key it in as a background image using chroma key or something, then I guess that's one way to do it. I would ask a slightly different question, which is, what do you want your background to say? What do you want the context in which you appear? I actually don't personally like the bookcases. I find they're too busy. I find they're too much stuff to look at. I've really becoming much more attracted to much more minimalist backgrounds with some content in them to give some context, but not too much. By the way, keying may be difficult, particularly if you've got all that sunlight coming in the room. So I'd be very careful of that. But I really ask yourself the question, Tony, what do I want this background to say? What's the message that I'm trying to communicate? And then build a background that the more physical you can make it, the more real world you can make it, the better it will look, even if, like so many people in office hours, it's slightly blockered out. That you can tell the difference, I think.
Yeah, Tony, I'm going to have to throw my hat in with Nigel here. I love your bookcase that's behind you, but if it's not keyed absolutely perfectly, I think it would distract from the great shows that you're having. So we look forward to seeing what you come up with, though. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Discuss Windows 11, 22H2, is that Windows 12, and Copilot and what features it will include, chat, image creation, coding, etc.
Paul Thurott from the Twit Network on Windows Weekly has been talking about 22H2 being potentially the Windows 12 for a while here. And I'm personally looking forward to the Copilot features. I just had my IT manager ask me, hey, do you want Copilot for Excel? I said, yes, absolutely. But as far as on the Windows side, I'm going to refer to Courtney again.
Is it 22H2 or 23H2?
I thought it was 23H2, actually.
It's
You're right.
23H2, I think maybe that's what it's meaning, which is the latest version, I think. And, I use the Copilot, it forces you to use Edge. And right now they're trying to monetize Copilot. So they are making subscriptions. And what used to be free is no longer free anymore on Windows, except for the Copilot pane that is in the Edge browser, which is what I brought up here on our website here, our Office Hours Global website. And it's pretty good at summarizing. I just said do a summarize of our schedule page here, and it hit all the high with bullet points and did all the high points here in a nice summarization. And I find that Copilot does a much better and more accurate job of any type of response and more up to date, because I think it's its large language model ended in 2023, so it's more up to date. It's GPT-4 plus, and its image generation using DALL-E 3, I think it's 3, is getting better and better. It's not up to Midjourney, but at least it's getting close. And it has the ability to input data via either drag and drop pictures into it and or open a microphone and just speak, and it will do voice to text translation for entering your information, and it will do text to voice for answering if you have a textual response out of what is generated. So, and it's still free as long as you use it within the Edge browser, although I have found it to slow down quite a bit if it's a busy time of day. Some days I'll ask it to summarize a page or do something, and it'll come up right away and start generating right away. Sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 minutes before it responds. It'll just sit there. So I think they're having a hard time managing all the usage of it because it's very expensive for Microsoft. That's why, and their plans, that for Office 365 are up to like $30 start, I think, at about $30 a month, which is quite expensive, for just that one feature of Copilot within all of the Office apps. So it's getting kind of pricey, and they're trying to establish another revenue stream that they can capitalize on.
Well, they've clearly said that it's not a feature for consumers when they put that $30 a month on it. I think when I look at the $30 a month and the time it might save me in Excel, and I was like, if it saves me 1 hour a month or 2 hours a month, and it saves a bunch of other people 1 or 2 hours a month over a whole department, that becomes a lot more than $30 an employee to make that happen. So I'm more excited about the Copilot features in terms of the on-ramping to use AI tools as part of your productivity work has really, really gotten a lot more shallow.
But if you're a business, that $30 a month is $30 per seat per month.
$30 per seat, but
quite expensive.
If I can have that human being that I paid to come into my office use their brain to make critical thinking decisions instead of data jockeying, that is worth it every single month. Mitch?
I was going to say, as a curmudgeon that I am, my last favorite Windows OS was NT. I thought it worked great. Don't you think it's about time that they stop building on top of building on top of building on top of, and do what Apple did when they went off of Power PCs and redo or re-architect from scratch the OS? I know there's billions of lines of code, but it just seems to me you're adding more trouble.
Well, they're doing a lot. They're doing a little bit of that now. Like they already tore Teams down and rebuilt it from the ground up because it was kind of hacked together during COVID and tried to make a bunch of things. They wanted to write it to be more cohesive. Microsoft is just consistently challenged with such a large installed base that they have to continue to support. I mean, them saying that I think they put a 10-year support window on their OSs now, which before it was kind of unlimited. That's why we had XP hang around for so long. But sorry, Nigel?
Yeah, and by the way, the new Teams is a slight disaster in my production environment. The audio's not working properly, and I can't make any of the virtual audio video. It's just...
and they took my Stream Deck buttons away.
Yeah, it's just... I mean, Teams is the best example of Microsoft's lack of care for anything outside its core Office products. Anything that, to me, that is in the next zone out is really struggling. Even though I'm a bigoted Mac user, I use Office for all my stuff at work and my personal stuff. And the reality, I think, of the Copilot for $30 is a bit like when I use Excel, I probably use 1/100th of the capabilities. And the people who use 5/100ths of the capabilities or 15/100ths of the capabilities will probably have the imagination to know what to use Copilot to do in Excel. The rest of us, I think it's way beyond us. I also think $30 is probably a very strategic pricing point because there's no point offering it for $5 because it won't get enough uptake. Where there's enough value, you can get $32. So I think they're trying to do a little bit of skimming in the market. I think over time you'll find that come down.
Sometimes I feel like Microsoft is it's like, they go through a round of layoffs or something like that, and a new team comes in to work on teams and say, okay, well, we need you to fix these bugs. And they say, we don't understand how this is written. We're just going to start over. Courtney.
Yeah, they do occasionally rewrite stuff from the ground up, but the nice thing about Windows that I've found, unlike the Mac world, and the Mac world is it's our way or the highway, and if they decide to orphan a version of the operating system and say we're not going to support that anymore, not only will they not offer you tech support for it, but it won't work anymore. They won't even offer a pathway to have it work in the more recent versions of the OS. And that's the thing about Windows. I can run programs that I wrote in DOS still, in a DOS window in Windows, and I can write stuff that I wrote in 1985, still runs in Windows 11. That is a great, and a lot of businesses have custom code that their whole business runs on, and that's why they can't leave the platform, and that's why Microsoft has to maintain backward compatibility with all those 32-bit applications that were written in the 80s and the 90s, because whole businesses would have to abandon and start all over from a new code base, and they're not willing to take those applications that they've developed and added to and expanded over 20 years and start over again. They just don't have the time.
Nigel?
And as someone who used to provide semiconductors into the PC market, let me tell you what Courtney just said is not only absolutely true, it's the bane of Microsoft's life. And my guess is if they look at Apple and they go, I wish we could do this, because not only is the Windows, particularly some of the server code, built on a house of cards of so many old versions and so many old libraries. One of the things that happened around the transition to Windows pre-7 was that the dates they had to close the code to do enough testing on it to get it out and working with Office was like almost 2.5 years before the release of the product. So Intel and AMD and other people are putting processors in the marketplace, and none of those features are going to get used for a couple of years because the testing cycles have become so long and so difficult. So the walled garden has its upside as a provider as well as a consumer.
Next question.
QR code question coming from Jack in New York. Jack says, how will AR/VR glasses be useful in life?
Go ahead, Nigel.
So I have a set of X-Real Airs, which I use on planes and stuff for watching things because it sort of blocks me out. And I finally went and did the demo session of the Vision 1 at an Apple store so I can pretend that I know something about the subject too. And I'll give you my two observations about it. It's longer, maybe another time. I think Apple, as much as we joke about them calling it spatial computing, I think one of the things they've accepted, this AR/VR long-term is going to be a distinction without a difference. That the reality is you're going to slip between these modes depending the context in which you're using the device. And I think what Apple's effectively saying is there's now a fourth usage scenario for their devices, if you include the watch, a fifth, but mostly a fourth usage scenario. And I think it's going to be a variation between those two things. So I don't think you're going to see that difference. I will tell you that there are going to be all sorts of fun things. The best one I've seen that I thought, well, that's really interesting. I watched a video of someone who was very hard of seeing and not quite blind, and they were able to use the vision goggles because of the way they worked and with their eyes to actually see greater definition. And what they were starting to say is, I might want to use some of these all the time, whether that's practical or not on the existing product is another question, because it can actually improve their sight dramatically.
Courtney?
Yeah, it depends on your term of AR/VR. The Apple version is not, it's AFVR or VFR, fake reality, because it's using an image from its cameras, which are not as high resolution as the images that can be created on and rendered on the displays themselves. Microsoft went the other way with a true AR, where you're seeing reality you're seeing actually through the lens, so that you don't disconnect from your environment or the people in your environment, because they can still see your eyes and you can still see them. And the augmentation is over the top of that. And I think that is probably going to be the way it goes. It's easier to stick stuff down like the way Apple has done it, because then it can just track the pixels that are coming from its cameras, and it doesn't have to track your eyeballs movements to know what you're looking at and to keep things pasted on that real image that's coming into your eyes, which is much more difficult to do, which is the other augmented reality systems are doing. But I like the ability, when it gets to the ability to have just a normal pair of glasses so that people don't look at you as like a tech freak nerd that you are, so that you look just like a normal person with some sunglasses on, and that have augmented reality superimposed over your actual vision. And there are diffraction, I've been reading in all my magazines, there are diffraction gratings that are coming up that will deliver those images fairly accurately and in high resolution with little tiny projectors in the earpiece, in the edge of the eyepiece that projects onto those lenses and can be very small. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it too. I spent, I think this Tuesday, I started at 8. I went from 8:30 to 5:30 in the headset. I worked the entire day. And I had to give my office up to somebody else because we're hiring more people than we have desk space for. And since I'm moving to a new location anyway, I said, okay, I'll be a nomad for a few months. The ability to sit down in an empty conference room and have a bigger monitor than I've ever had in any office, and be able to put a couple of other screens around that were powered by the Vision was an absolute game changer. Now, I did have to sit by myself because I didn't want to be, because I just feel like I do look a little funny wearing them. But the day when we can have those glasses is a game changer. I just feel like we've all gotten a peek at what's coming down the pike and what's next. But that is going to bring us right up to the top of the second hour. So we are going to have to push a couple of questions back. If you had a QR code question that we didn't get to, we'll bring that back in automatically. If you had a question that you asked us via MoCa, that will show up back in your notes. If you go into the hamburger menu in MoCa, you can see those. Thank you very much to our panelists for being here. It's a much less fun show without all the smarts around this room. Thank you to our producers who kept up with the excellent questions all the way up to noon. That was really great. You guys and girls out there asked the best questions, and it's fun to hear them every day. And thank you to our crew on the back end for cutting the show, for getting us in, for making us look good, for making us sound good, supporting us, managing the questions, helping us with pronunciations. It's an enormous amount of work, and I'm thankful for it every single time I'm on. For the Tulalip Traversal today, we did 103,000 miles. That's 165,000 kilometers, which is 814 million bananas for scale. All right, let's jump into After Hours. Oh, wait, just one reminder. The Office Hours Panelist meeting is right now. So hop into that if that's where you need to be. Office Hours Panelist meeting immediately after the show, and hang around tomorrow for introspection. Now, into After Hours. See you later.
Onward into the fog.
And where do you find the link to the panel meeting? Is it in
After Hours?
I think it's in Discord, but I can send it to you. I thought there was a calendar invite now.
Could be.
Good show, by the way, CJ. Good job.
Thank you. There's
a nice pronunciation of the English and.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ronnie, because I'm not going to have, our Norwegian accent. So it's sort of an Americanization of anybody's name in Norway. So I just added a little bit of that sh sound going into the front of it because I heard you say that instead of a hard K. So I think
as long as my name is better than Kjetil's, that's good enough.